So obviously we fell very, very sharply today, right? The SPY, the NASDAQ, the entire market was red. But what are we doing now? All right. The SPY is currently at a very important level of support. The NASDAQ reclaimed its upward trend line. And the IWM is starting to reverse from its very important level of support. So in today's video, we're going to go over all of those different things. We're going to go over the crypto markets, and we're going to tie in how the bond market sits in all of this chaos. All right. So without further ado, let's get right into it. Oh, wait, but first, if you guys enjoy the content that I post, please make sure to like the video, subscribe to the channel. It really means a lot and it helps me. So yeah, now without further ado, let's get right into it. So this is obviously the SPY, right? And we've been monitoring this black trend line for quite some time. And also this upper blue trend line here, which was acting as resistance all throughout this time. And then once we closed above it 3 times, that gave us the foundation to cross back up very, very quickly to this black trend line. Okay, so so there's 3 main lines on this chart. There's this main level of resistance. There's this black level of resistance and this new lower trend line here that also started at the bottom of the March 2020 coronavirus collapse. But instead of connecting on October 20th, it connects to the lows of March 4th. So it's a bit more sharper to the downside. So it gives more room, okay? So where we are now is this prior level of resistance and that lower level of support is now intersected, and we are currently bouncing off of that level right now on the SPY. So we need to see if this entire little zone area holds as support for the SPY. But the fact that we are at such an important level right here, it does, look potentially like it could hold, because, we fell sharply and we ended up bouncing exactly off of these 2 levels very, very nicely. So we need to see if we can hold those levels. Obviously, a break of today's lows, below 427.50 would, basically guarantee that this isn't holding. So tomorrow we essentially need to see if we're going to close below 427.50. But the main level of support where both of them are intersected, literally you can see this right here, is going to be approximately 428.40. So 428.40 is going to be, a very, very important level for tomorrow. And as long as we can remain above these 2 levels, things should be very, very good for the SPY, and we can potentially start bouncing from these levels. And there's the analysis on the SPY. So now I want to look back at the IWM. So in yesterday's YouTube video, I said, what might end up happening is, first of all, there's many different lines, right? But as you can see in today's price action, yesterday we fell outside of the lower level of the B band. And I said what might end up happening is we can end up falling below 220 or retest 218, find a bottom, and then start climbing back up. Because what happened back in May was similar to July 7th, yesterday, where we fell outside of the lower level of the B band. But then the next day we fell even lower to a much better level of support. And that's where we ended up bouncing. So that is almost exactly what happened today. We did yesterday fall outside of the lower level of the B band, which is a bullish sign, right? But then today we ended up collapsing and going down even further. Similar to this big red candle here, this is basically exactly what happened. We fell at a very important level of support. Just like here, we fell at a very important level of support. You can see the MACD is extremely overbought or oversold right here. Sorry, look at this MACD line right here. Very overbought. Similar to right here, the MACD line is very oversold, right? The RSI fell sharply, So there were many different similarities between these 2 moves. So it worked out pretty well. So this is another reason why space and these other, IWM related stocks, PLTR, were all popping off in the morning. because economically sensitive stocks such as those and stocks, you know, in the IWM or influenced by the IWM did very well today, because this fell the hardest, but then it bounced the hardest as well. So it bounced, I mean, it fell all the way below, like right below 218.11, which was a very important level of support. We ended up falling to 217.85, right? But then we bounced back all the way up to 224.08, literally on the dot. This is the high. Look at the high. We bounced back up to 224.08. And that is literally a very, very important level that we've been monitoring all throughout this period, which is the 38.2% fib level. So now we just need to see whether or not IWM can trade above 220.87 and hold that level. But right now it's very, very oversold on the MACD. We bounced off of support. It looks pretty good. This looks like a good potential continuation to the upside on the IWM. All right, so there's my analysis on the SPY and the IWM. Now we're going to go quickly into the NASDAQ and the bonds. So for today, obviously the NASDAQ, it opened up below this level, this uptrend level, right? And I said the important level for today was going to be 356.50, right? We ended up opening below 356.50. But what happened was we crossed back above 356.50 and we went all the way back up to 359.65. So if you had bought calls as we crossed above that level, you would be heavily in profit, because that was a very, very important level for us to break either to the downside, and then if we did break it to the downside, a return back up to that level and then a break upward of that level like we did today. That was very, very important. So the NASDAQ reclaimed this uptrend level. So the level tomorrow that needs to hold and we need to stay above, so similar to today, is going to be 357.60. So 357.60 is going to be a very important level. If we cross below that, then it's, you know, grounds to become a bit more bearish. If we are below that and cross back above, then it's a good opportunity for a quick scalp to the upside. So as you can see, the MACD is starting to cool off a bit. The RSI sharply fell today as well, which is a good sign, even though, you know, we look at how we closed. We closed minus 60%, minus 0.6%, which is barely anything. And yet everything cooled off in a very, very good way. We did fall heavily, but we regained much of the losses. We were down 1.5% at the open. So this was a good return rally back up. Overall, this is still very bullish price action. It only makes sense that, you know, something that's been moving upward in such a sharp way for a month and a half can have, you know, multiple like shakeout days where people start, you know, becoming very bearish or selling their profits. So this overall it's just normal price action. So tomorrow we need to monitor that level at 357.60. Overall, the NASDAQ looks still intact and bullish. The SPY looks bullish. The IWM potentially looks like it can continue on higher. Now let's look at the 30-year yield. Obviously, the 30-year yield is still parabolic. It's still going crazy. It crossed back up. It crossed back above 164, and it's currently at 163.30. You can see that this is very, very overextended. We're very, very overbought on the MACD. We're now overbought on the RSI, and we are trading outside of the upper level of the B bands. So, multiple reasons to, you know, start becoming weary of the 30-year yield movement. But again, there is so much more room to the upside for the 30-year. So it's not a huge concern currently. Very similar to the dollar, right? So the dollar, it's also pretty overextended, right? But there's so much more room to the upside on the dollar that this little movement here is not a huge concern, right? But more specifically on the dollar, it had a red day today, but it looks much more bullish than the 30-year yield because it's still a bit oversold on the MACD, and it isn't as overbought on the RSI. And yet it's still holding support very, very well. This is a bull flag and a bullish pattern. So overall, the dollar looks really, really great as well. So if the dollar and the 30-year yield are bullish, then the NASDAQ is going to continue being bullish. Let's check out the 10-year yield. So the 10-year yield looks very, very bearish. You can see that the MACD started to move upward, even though we barely moved upward on the 10-year yield, which means that the slightest movement to the upside would cause the MACD to become a bit more bullish, which is not a good sign, which means that, like, basically the 10-year yield can move back up to here, and then by that time the MACD would be back all the way over here. Whereas on the QQQ, that same movement would cause like a little uptick to the upside right here, would mean a break of multiple levels of resistance and continuation upward. Whereas, you know, we just saw on the 10-year yield, a very, very small movement to the upside would cause a drastic, sharp move to the upside on the MACD. All right, so I hope I kind of explained what that means a bit well on the 10-year yield. So once again, if the 10-year yield and the dollar are bullish, then the IWM will be bullish. But if the 30-year yield and the dollar are bullish, then the NASDAQ will be bullish. And very rarely, currently, what's not going to happen is, I mean, we have to see if this happens, but most likely what is not going to happen is the 10-year yield, when it's bearish, that would mean the 30-year yield is bullish, okay? So we just need to continue monitoring how that works. And otherwise, this was just a little blip. It looks like we can continue on much higher on the overall indices. Crude oil also rebounded pretty nicely off of the 38.2% fib level at 71. So crude oil going up was also like a good sign for the SPY to, you know, stay above this level. But we're at very, very important support on the SPY. So we just need to see how we respond around that level here. All right, that's my overall take on the overall markets. Now we can go ahead and check out Bitcoin. All right, so yesterday we were checking out Ethereum, right? And Ethereum was leading Bitcoin out of the rut that it was currently in, right? So Ethereum, it broke 2341 yesterday, and it went all the way up to 2410, right? But it could not close above that level. So, you know, clearly today we had a huge red day. We're down 8%. And we reversed back from this resistance, and that has caused Bitcoin to also, you know, this bullish pattern that I was looking at on Bitcoin did not play out. But it's still a good sign that it's holding above this very important blue trend line here. We can see, you know, this is holding support. And another very good sign is that Bitcoin is finally now oversold on the MACD. So now that Bitcoin is now oversold, even if we do break this level, as long as we hold above 31,000, the MACD on Bitcoin can become much more oversold. We can consolidate a bit more around these levels, and then it would give more room and stamina to go to the upside for Bitcoin. But aside from that, you know, because Ethereum had so much trouble trying to break above 2341, Bitcoin responded in a very similar fashion, broke below this level of support, but it's currently holding it now. So we just need to see how it responds around 31,500, and then of course 30,000. The upside levels of resistance are going to be 33,500 and then 34,120. So aside from that, we again, you know, as long as Bitcoin chops around here and becomes very, very oversold on the MACD, that's a very bullish signal to me. I don't really care what really happens, whether or not we have a huge red day and then a huge green day and then another huge red day, as long as the MACD cools off a bit. And, you know, over here, the MACD, you remember that we were very, very overbought. We consolidated and we cooled off. Finally, we are now literally oversold on the MACD, which is a very, very good sign. So aside from that, I mean, There's not much else to look at. I hope you guys had an amazing day, and I will catch you guys tomorrow. Thank you.